Welcome to Trust the Journey, episode 8. I'm Melanie Curtis.
And I am Jason Maletsky.
Our mission is to live, laugh, love, and learn together with you.
We're here to create conscious connections, to grow and contribute through our practice of openness, honesty, vulnerability, humility, and trust. Trusting the entire journey.
In this episode, we're talking about the golden circle, starting with why, looking at mission, shared vision, and what it actually is to be, quote, values aligned.
As always, if you get value from the show, please help us out and share whenever and however you're inspired to do so.
Thank you so much for being with us, everyone. Here we go, episode 8. Good morning.
Good morning.
Love it.
I'm very excited about the topics today.
I am as well. These are always start with why, the whole Simon Sinek thing, like that is something that's inspired me for a long time. And I feel like if I point to anything that brings me happiness and fulfillment, all those buzzwords that we chase or are like, oh, that sounds cheesy or this or that, it's because I make values aligned choices. Period. And choose projects that are aligned with that. Like that's what this feels like to me, as we've discussed before, how this is to me in line with my values of self-expression, contribution to others, growth of self, and expansion of my mind, and looking into blind spots and being of service and just all this stuff. Oh yeah, for me, I show up to this every time and I'm like, yeah, that's why I show up and I have so much energy. I feel like every time we talk.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that's happened a lot, and I guess for our viewership, the value of what we're doing to us who are here talking right now is creative process. It is that, like, okay, I'm not 100% sure exactly how this is going to go or what it's going to lead to, but I know why. I'm doing it. And I'm doing it because I want to mentor, I want to share, I want to take collected experience and verbalize it and express it and get it out there for other people to associate with or to relate to, and to help guide others, to save them from maybe going down some of the same roads I've been on, or if they've been on the same road already, recognize, hey, there's other people that go through this too.
Yes.
And the shared experience of humanity.
Definitely. 100%. Like one of the things that I love about when you share vulnerably, like you general, when people share vulnerably, and this is why a big reason why I'm so called to courageous, vulnerable self-expression and sharing of process or pain or whatnot, or whatever, healing, or like all of that stuff that kind of touches those more painful emotions, is that it provides us that experience of not feeling alone, of feeling really like supported in that shared experience, even if it's like reading a book, like I can think about like even just like reading Eat, Pray, Love, for example, which I don't know if you've ever read that book. It's by Elizabeth Gilbert, super well known. It's her, biggest, most giant book, went crazy, but it's this beautiful story of her own sort of ruin as the road to transformation. And so people who are in the ruin phase, or confused and struggling in their own process and stuff, it's such a beautiful connecting story. It's so vulnerable and real and speaks to the emotion of stuff like that. She is one of my definite, like if I had to say I had a mentor that like, was someone I looked up to and admired, she's on that list for sure, because of how she creates and expresses for that connecting like reason of sharing humanity and helping people feel supported in that.
It's a challenging topic for one of the reasons is that we often misalign our drivers of why we're doing something because of financials, right? Like
Yeah.
financials are often like the key thing that gets put in front for why. Like, why did I go for this job application? Well, because I needed money. I got to pay my rent. I need to take care of my kids, or I got all these responsibility in life. You have to, supply a financial means.
Yep.
And at some point in your life, you either recognize that what you're doing isn't emotionally or uh you know in whatever part of yourself is true to how you're spending your time and what you're doing with it. Is it truly satisfying? Does it truly bring you a feeling of a circular delivery to others that comes back to self, or whatever process you're doing in your day-to-day? Does it feel fulfilling?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
at some point you either say, this is what I do day to day. It's fulfilling enough that if it equals out with the financials and all the other things, and I get enough time off, and okay, I'm good with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you go, what I'm doing just doesn't quite meet the mark, and I now want to aspire to create something new in my life that's going to give me this more fulfilled means of existence. I think this is a lot of what people are looking for in their life. Like, this is kind of that crux point of
Mm-hmm.
your decision-making process often falls prey to a couple of the things that are may perceive to have immediate value, but don't necessarily have the long-term emotional, heart feeling, creative space, safe
Yeah.
environment, all these types of things that give each of us our opportunity to truly grow as individuals.
Yeah, yeah, and this is the thing. This is a super good thing to talk about, because we've also seen, like, in the, I mean, maybe you haven't, but you tell me, like, in the personal growth space, and like the kind of general tone of like, do what you love, like sort of the overly not really considered do what you love thing. Like, I so don't like that, because it's unbalanced, it's not considered, which is why I'm like, fuck that, no, because that makes people who do have a life where they are choosing to work, say, a certain less fulfilling job scenario, because it's driven by, say, their value of family. When people feel less fulfilled by their work, they tend to just Matil.
Hi. I don't
She's
want to be
joining us
here.
today.
Yeah.
When people feel less fulfilled by their work, they tend to forget why they're doing it. You know what I mean? So, like, if they are doing it more to provide for their family or create some type of thing, like, that's just as valid as doing what you love and being fulfilled in every moment in your work. It's a different type of life choice. Now, I obviously reside in the camp of, it's very important to me to do what I am called most of my days. Do I do some stuff that has to affect my bottom line and have to do paperwork and stuff like that and call the IRS? Yeah, I have to do all that stuff that I don't want to do to be sort of part of that system, But I remember that that's connected to this thing, this project, this business that I'm building that is values aligned. So in theory, I'm able to consistently connect those not fun jobs, not fun pieces of my work, to the values. So I think when people, you know what I mean? Like, so there's that skill of connecting the things that aren't as fun to the values. And then there's the question of, do I leave this job that is super unfulfilling? Because then we can go to the top 10 regrets of the dying. Have you ever read that article?
I haven't read that, no.
Yeah, the number one, I mean, I think it's the number one. I'd have to look at the article to be sure. I can post it with this.
I think I know the list. I don't think I've read it, but I think I know the list. Go for it.
Well, yeah. Anyway, one of the top regrets of the dying is that they wish they had worked less.
Yeah.
And so that implies working less, doing something you do not love, that disconnects you from your family or other human connections or other things that are fulfilling to us as human beings. And again, I can't say what's fulfilling to everyone else, but just to say that in general, across the board, it seems pretty ubiquitous that we're wanting love and connection and understanding and acceptance and all that stuff.
Whose quote is it that says to take what you love and let it kill you?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's one I've read in some readings not so long ago, and I've thought a lot about it because I did I made that decision. I did the do what you love thing, and what it
Yep.
meant was a decade of near starvation. It meant
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, it meant living off of absolutely no income for an extended period of time, and
Right.
I lived a incredible life, but a life of very, very limited means
Yep.
and very challenging. And it meant zero security, zero ease of mind. It
Right.
was very difficult mentally and very taxing. I would say that I paid a price for that, which means
Yeah.
that going to bed at night and not having any clarity of thought, not having any ease of mind, and just constantly being in this state of having to give in to not knowing what's going on,
So
and
hard.
it's very difficult, and it gets
Super
really,
hard.
really tiring. It just gets exhausting, and at some
Definitely.
point you want to be able to come back from wherever I've been and know where things are once I've returned. Like, so I lived out of a storage unit for a year,
Yeah.
where I couldn't afford to pay rent. So I just left my stuff in a storage unit, and I would just travel from job to job and event to event and come back and change bags out of the storage unit and
Yep.
stay with friends, and just
Yep.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I think there's a happy medium here. I think that there's what you're saying is like, yeah, I don't agree with that. Like, I would agree with you as that you take whatever you love and you pour your whole self into it. And if that means getting up in the morning an hour early and working your butt off on something that you love before you go to your financial moneymaker,
Right.
and then when you're on lunch or when you get home, you immediately pour your attention back into that other thing that you
Yeah.
care about so much, that fulfills you emotionally and mentally, and creativeness and whatever part of yourself that feels like you're making something for your own enjoyment or doing something or helping other, whatever the process is that
Yeah.
you find yourself desiring to do. If
Yeah.
you're working on it whenever there's a free minute, then you're achieving it, you're doing it. And at some point the weight will shift. Like, there'll be a tipping point, right, where
Yeah.
it'll go from, okay, I do this on nights and weekends, to I think I'm going to cut back on my regular
Yeah.
40-hour work week and get a part-time job, and I'm going to do this now officially part-time or officially full-time, or whatever the structure is. And I know that when that happened with me with skydiving, it was the first time that I had the blue collar job.
Yep.
I worked 60-hour weeks.
I did
And
too. I mean, I didn't work 60-hour weeks, but I had the like white collar full on
white collar.
job. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when you make the choice, like, I called my boss, I'm like, I don't think I'm coming back in, and he's like, what do you mean not coming back in? I mean, like, I don't think I'm coming back. Like, I think I'm just going to go do this now instead. And the scales tipped. And I see that happening again in my life with the efforts towards music now, where I spend every moment that I'm not absolutely a baked potato, if I'm not fried from everything that I've done work-wise, if I've got a little bit of energy, I'm putting it into this continual development of these projects. And
Yeah.
this example of what we're doing right now is another one of those where you're like, okay, what are we going to do is the question. We get in
Yep.
touch, we start talking, what are we going to do? We're like, well, we're not 100% sure, but I think we have a basic idea. So let's get started doing something.
Yep.
And if we like it, we'll keep going down that road. If we don't, we'll diverge to another road.
Correct.
And so we've now been doing this for a couple of months now.
Mm-hmm.
And we're getting further and further down the what road of
Yep.
understanding what we're doing. And we're starting to get to ask ourselves and just to discuss in this episode for the audience, live to life,
Totally.
why are we doing this? What are we doing? And I think our shared mission, shared vision,
Mm-hmm.
seeing others around you that have energetic alignment, finding others who've put energy towards the things that you're interested in, that you
Yeah.
care about, And so I say, hey, Mel, let's do something. Okay,
Yep.
what do you want to do? Well, let's have a conversation. Let's start talking. Let's start sharing.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And now what are we going to do with it? Well,
Mhm.
we'll put it out there for audiences to listen to, and then we'll start getting audience feedback, and then we'll start developing more and more ways. How are we going to monetize this? How's it going to make up the
Yep.
value for all the time and effort we've put into it? I don't know.
Yep.
We'll figure it out along the
Yep.
way, you know? And
That
so,
speaks. Keep
yeah,
going. Sorry.
no, I mean, I like to share this with the audience because I think that it's a really empowering process for me as the outside observer to witness people going down their road of development, of growth, of building, of construction, of change, and of divergent and reconvergence again on their paths,
Agreed.
because it inspires me to be willing to take some chances, take a risk, go down a road I may not know what's coming up around the corner, and say, okay, well, win or lose, this is a value of experience,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
more time I spend with people doing things that are interested in the things that I'm interested in, the more I grow in that side of my person. And so I think that's one of the big whys for me, is because I want
Yeah.
to be around people doing this.
Absolutely. And that's one of the core things that I believe for sure, like that it speaks to that quote of, uh, surround yourself. I can't remember it exactly, but like be around, people that you will be like those with whom you surround yourself, like
Mhm.
your environment is stronger than you are, or Jim Rohn's quote of like, you are the average of the people you spend five
Mm.
people you spend the most time with.
Yep.
And so it begs the question of who are we choosing to spend our time with? But what I like about what you're sharing and what I think is awesome to highlight, there's multiple things, to be honest, but one of them is this idea that you and I have known each other a while, right?
Mhm.
And we've been on the parallel path or whatever, and you've been doing your thing and living sort of into your own authentic self and values, courageously growing as well. So, like, even though, like, I'm not a DJ, you
Mm.
know,
Mhm.
not you know what I mean, like that's not something I do, but that doesn't matter. It's not about the specificity of what we are doing. I think the magnetism, or what I think brings certain people together, is that undertone of, if it's authentically shared. So if I think about this project, like, we're not making money doing this yet. Theoretically it could go to that direction, and who knows, hopefully it
Mhm.
will. Only, and I say that such that because we are doing things that are of service to the world, I genuinely believe when income and money comes to people like that, it's great for the world, because it means more positive contribution will be created and stuff like that. So that's, if we talk about the money conversation, like that's a big thing that I worked to really feel that, and disassociate with, like, oh, it's not okay if we earn money. It's like, no, it actually is great if we earn money, because we're good people doing good things in the world. So, but that topic aside, it's more like we're doing an authentic like thing from our why, and as a result, I believe that when we do that, that magnetizes the people that buy into that want to be a part of that want to be connected to that are finding inspiration of their own from that example. And so that is why am I willing to spend hours and hours of my time doing this?
Mm.
For real. And it's
Yeah.
not just because I think you're great. It is that, but it's also because I believe in that bigger potential and possibility for impact and other people, and just the win-win-win-win-win that I see possible here. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. And that points to what you said about us diving in from that sort of why place, from that baseline value, and being open and in the work of deciding collaboratively what is it going to design into and become into the vision versus the mission.
It's the chicken and egg scenario, right?
Yeah.
So we both know that we want to have chicken and we want to have eggs. So which one do you want to have first, and why do you want to have it, or which one comes before the other? You know, like you can
Yeah.
have eggs and have grow chickens, or you can get a chicken and get eggs, you know, and either way, it doesn't matter. The key element is that, you know, you want to have something in your life, which is a service to self and others. And
Yeah.
I think that's kind of rooting down, like, both you and I are on this path of growth to grow ourselves, to
Definitely.
mature our spiritual beings, our emotional beings, our logistical thinking beings, like our whole selves, all the
Yeah.
different parts of self that need nurture, that need care, that need to be fed so that they can grow. And we're here to provide ourselves the opportunity for growth by providing the opportunity for growth to others, right? The
Definitely.
cyclical nature of it, right? The
Totally.
circles behind me there, the circles are there for a reason, right? The
Nice.
circles remind me of our individual nature of self and our life beginning and ending all in the same spot, but the connectivity of all, and how we need one to feed into the other, to feed into the next, to come back around, to feed ourselves, to feed each other. So I think that's a nice, it starts to give me some clarity. Like, I like talking about the whys. I'm a very conceptual thinker, right? I like to constantly dive into what we're doing, why we're doing it, like really root
Yeah.
fundamental pieces of the
Good.
puzzle, because it really gives me inspiration to and clarity with the direction that energy in a project or anything that you're working on your own or with others,
Yep.
to help clearly define what the path ahead is. And we've talked about this in some of the goal setting stuff before, where it's like, okay, well, if we get more and more clarity of our goals, we can move more and more clearly towards them,
Yeah.
identify the steps in the process.
Yeah.
And what we're doing today is it's a very natural evolution. I see this happen a lot for people that are very creative. Is you get started doing something and you're not quite sure what it's going to look like or how it's going to look, and so you just start.
Yeah.
And that could be it's a painting analogy too. You may not know what you're going to paint before you pick up the palette and start painting, or you may not know what you're going to sculpt. If you're a sculptor, you might just have a blob of clay in front of you and you're going to make something, and you just start moving around until you get something going. But most of the time we have kind of a general concept. I mean, so if you use the sculptor analogy, well, you're not going to build a house out of a blob of clay.
Right.
You know, you're going to make maybe a miniature house, but you're not going to make one you're going to live in. So you have a little more context. You're going to make a clay sculpture. You know, it
Right.
could be a bowl, it could be, you know, a little man, or it could be a skull, or it could be, who knows what it could be, right? And so you have a more limited scope in reality when you talk about the frames of reference of what you're doing. So for you and I, and for the audience, we live in opposite ends of the continent,
Mm-hmm.
country, right? Like, we're very
Yeah.
far apart from each other. So we're doing a virtually based network here. So
Yep.
everything we do is based off of being remote,
Mm-hmm.
and it's based off of being available at random times and places, but also agreeing upon the fact that we want some consistency in
Agreed.
what we do in our lives. And so there's this structural piece that's developing, which is helping to drive our process and
Mm-hmm.
helping to give each of us clarity as to what the next step might be. If there's
Yep.
some steps before that are clear, then the steps going forward can be more clear. And so we have our baselines for, you know, how it's going to work coming into place. And going forward, we kind of know that, okay, anything else we do is going to have to maintain this remote structure, this
Mm-hmm.
virtual structure, unless we make a big change to it,
Totally.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I like that, because what's so cool about this is that, yeah, getting clear on, okay, we're starting to create this content. We're starting to record these conversations with this baseline intent, and we're banking episodes, and we're identifying how we set our conversation up before we speak, like getting into that structure as well.
Mhm.
Also then looking at, well, what are successful versions of this type of content creation that's out there. Like I listen to a ton of podcasts. There's a lot of podcasts, or YouTube shows, like both. I mean, whatever you call it, they're both. Like usually people extract the audio from the video and turn it into the podcast and, just basically run it on both channels. And so there's a lot of examples of successful shows and podcasts like that run that format. So I think it's cool and useful to look at those examples, which is what we are doing, is starting to entertain, okay, are we a podcast, and would we want to entertain sponsorship, and what is that going to look like, while being open-minded that we're not necessarily only aiming to fit into that pigeonhole if something else were to show itself in terms of structure or process, or the way we would monetize, or the way that we would not monetize, whatever. It really depends. Some people give away their content entirely for free because they want to build a community and have that community then know about something else that they're doing. And that is equally as awesome, so it just depends. But I love that we're in that process and starting to put those questions, like by the time this episode airs, based on our plan, you know what I mean? Like it'll be a while once people start watching or hearing our episodes that they will then see this one or hear this one. And so like, will the intro and outro be on it? Maybe, possibly, hopefully, who knows? So we'll see. Like it's almost like in this conversation, there will be even more by the time it's out there, which will be kind of, I think, a cool thing.
Yeah.
Like we'll have ideally answered some of these questions a bit more, which is cool.
That is very interesting, because a lot of the time, what we try to do in the world has some context of being contrived.
Yeah.
So you see a product release, and I feel like I'm pretty good at understanding the vision for marketing, when a product gets released and all the back work has gone into it.
Right.
When it hit the market, this certain kind of mouth feel and texture and how it smells and how it tastes and how it looks and all the things around it. And you get this full package deal where you're like, wow, this is a really well finished product. It's fit and finish, it's like, oh, I love this car because the panels are perfect and everything's been so well thought out, and they've obviously been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
But that fully prepared delivery is wonderful in some context, but it misses a lot of the truth in the story.
Yeah.
It doesn't give you the reality of life that, there were, 40 years in this car company that led up till developing these products to make them the way they are today. And, this piece comes from over here and this piece comes from over here. And all you get is this little kind of end game scenario. And like we've talked about many times, the journey is really the gold, right? The gold is the process. And each of us is only going to have one beginning and one end in our life. We don't want to rush away from one straight to the other. Yeah. We want our life to be the important part, right? So we're not looking to be like, boom, here at the end and be like, here's my life. How did it look? You know, do you like the finished product? Because the product is ongoingly changing, and I think that's, like, for me, that's a big piece of this, is recognizing that I am my own product. I am the culmination of my life experience of who I surround myself with, of what I choose to do in my life, of how I choose to react, and how aware I am of my own reactions. And that this daily changes. That when I wake up today, I'm not the same man that I was yesterday. I have the same experiences, but if I make new choices and different choices every day that move me forward, then I'm a different person every day.
Agreed. Yeah.
When I show up and be like, hi Mel, good morning, I'm like, this is Jay today. I have made changes from yesterday. I'm the new upgraded version. You know? Hopefully I
wrote a column about this phenomenon, actually. Really? Yeah, because it's this idea of like sameness or routine or whatever. And it's like, that begs the question of like motivation, again, back to fulfillment. Like, why we make these choices that we make, what do we want our lives to include, and it also points to perspective. Like if we have, so we could be doing this, you know, theoretically be like, oh, okay, well, another recording, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Oh, yeah.
extrapolate forward, and it's just like, we've both seen this in skydiving, extrapolate forward long enough, and anything theoretically can start to feel like it's not a growth experience.
Mm-hmm.
But what I love about what you just pointed to is this perspective that actually, truly, in reality, everything is always brand new.
Mm-hmm.
Always. And there's always sort of that infinite possibility in the, and always that opportunity for us to show up however we're going to show up. It just so happens that I show up this way most of the time because I feel clear and, you know, strong in my values and all that stuff. And you know what I mean?
Well,
but like,
do you
I
feel like
love that, like that there's opportunity in every moment, and that we can and really embrace, like, this is new. I am a new person in like literally every moment.
Do you feel like you've made choices in your day to day of who and why you involve yourself with and the projects that you're involved in, so that now less and less of the time you find yourself in a potentially negative reverberation environment, right? So it's
Yeah.
easy to show up more positive and be like, hey, I'm here, I'm excited, I'm ready to contribute and build and grow, because it's not that energy is going to be received and sent back to you with a
Yes.
mirror of what you're doing with people that are also excited in that same way. And so I'm sure that you, like me, are parts of many groups. Those are listeners out there the same. We're involved
Yep.
in many different types of groups or organizations, you know, our cultures. So you could just say, you know, I've got my family circle at home. I've got
Yep.
my circle of people that I work with in close contact, or in the secondary layer of people that I work with, clubs, organizations,
Mm-hmm.
teams, whatever groups it may be. And some of those groups, for me, function incredibly well. And I'm just look forward. I mean, I'm like, sweet, I'm going to do that thing with these
Yeah.
people that is just so fun, because they're all so positive and they all have an open, sharing, trusting, vulnerable type of exchange going on, and spending the time in that environment. When I come out the other side, I've grown in a positive way in the
Yeah.
direction that I'm hoping to grow. And then other groups may contain elements that hold more negativity, and that there is more challenges to overcome with management of the different energies involved in the group. And
Yeah.
more of the time, I see myself recognizing those negative energy circles
Yep.
earlier and saying, maybe I'm not going to get involved with this group,
Yeah.
because that one's going to take a lot of me
Mm-hmm.
to try and change, or maybe I won't be able to change that group to a more
Right.
positive swing. And I just had one pop up recently, and I'm on the fence. You know, I'm like, I felt really good about this. I really want to be part of it.
Yeah.
But there's so much immediate negativity thrown on the table by membership that I'm like, perhaps I shall walk away. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's taken me a long time it's taken me a long time to learn that saying no is of service as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like to learn that, like, the people pleasing and that whole way of being, of wanting to be liked and have no conflict, like that type of approach to people and experiences, that just does not serve. Like, you know, I mean, shit, I'm 40 years old. Like, it's taken me some years to figure this out,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of, like, pain and energetic expenditure, you know, like, it's this that's a tough thing, I think, for people that want to believe in this less balanced way, that love, or loving everyone, or being love, which I believe in very strongly.
As
Love,
do I.
you know, love and hilarity, two most important things in life. Like, I really believe in that as my core, like, love. And so I think learning that love doesn't like it still exists in a removed way. Like I can have love and compassion for a person over there that's maybe more toxic right now in their journey, like they haven't grown into, or are simply going down a road that I do not feel aligned with. You know, it's not right or wrong, no judgment. It's more just like that to me feels toxic and taking and heavy on my energy. And so I'm going to choose to not be a part of that, because I have learned that if I do not protect my energy and protect my own mindset, that I cannot give and create in the ways that I know. And again, I say that no, but I leave that open too, like in terms of growth, but like in the ways that I have learned, fulfill me and have me on fire and have me very excited to get up in the morning and either create a video or write an email to a client or whatever. Like it, you know, it just like depends. But like for me, I'm very much protective of my energy and protective of my mindset. Like I don't, you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Entirely. And I think that I've been trying to become very more so observant to the human condition of how we act and react, how we are all emitting energy and receiving energy.
Yeah.
And that the outward expression that we put out, I mean, when you become aware that you are always emitting outwardly,
Yes.
then you can become aware of when it's positive and when it's negative. And really, there's only these two charges, you know, it's like magnetism or electricity. This is an energetic thing. I'm energetically being positive towards you, or I'm being negative towards you. And it can float towards the middle, but there's never truly in the middle, right?
Right.
It's always one side or the other. And because everybody's constantly doing this, because we're always emitting and receiving, we have an output and an input of energy, then if we are around others who emit same positive, good, we're going to create more positivity together. It's going to multiply.
Yes.
But are quick to for negative, it's going to deplete our positive energy supply, and it can take it to a point where we actually turn us into a negative charge, and the charge flips. And I watched a documentary series yesterday, and it was incredibly eye-opening. It was about Osho. Do you know who I'm speaking of?
Yeah. I don't think I've seen it, but tell me. Yeah.
So he's a guru from India who had a huge following, and he moved to America. And in his move to America and in his attempts to establish a commune in America, they did so in a questionable manner, which caused repercussions, right? So the people around them reacted negatively to their positivity, and their positivity was overflowing. They had immense amounts of positivity. You're talking thousands and thousands of people with incredibly positive nature and a very open mind and open-hearted, love-centered. And it turned into weapons and battles and actual just really incredibly negative. And you've gone from people that have built an entire culture around the concept of love and openness and sharing and self-reflection and self-awareness to a negative, just down and down and down and down and down and down until it's gone, until all you have is all this negativity between these. And you're like, where did they lose it? Where did they lose track of it? And it's an energy depletion situation, right? Where you've locked yourself into an environment where you're in close proximity with a negative charge, extended period of time, your charge will flip. So one of the things that we're trying to become aware of in our lives is the tendency for that to happen, or when those situations arrive, and how do we make subtle changes or large changes to what we're doing to ensure that we're not going to allow our positive energy to flip on us, that we're not going to get kind of dragged down that hole And it's up to us as individuals to maintain that self-awareness or to recognize a situation coming. I think, I mean, you say, I'm 40 now, I'm 45. I think you're like, oh, wait, I'm finally old enough and mature enough to recognize that this has happened to me before.
Right.
And this
I've had
time
enough experiences that this has happened. Yeah.
yeah. And so I'm not going to let it happen to me this time. This time I'm going to be, I'm going to say, you know what, thanks. I don't think I'm going to go on this one, or be, you guys, you got this. Have fun,
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it can be painful if we identify with and we have a piece of our identity connected to this idea that I'm loving, and really understanding that that can exist in actions that remove you from those negative charges. Another thing that's important to understand about negative energy, and I say this to people listening, and this is I actually learned how to administer an assessment through my coaching training and stuff back 10 years ago, and I've done it with many people over the last 10 years. It is just a process that gives us language and a tool to understand exactly what we're talking about today. Something to really hear is that negative energy, like this heavy, depleting energy, is more potent than the positive energy. And even a small negative charge can have a high impact. So that's what makes it even more critical that we recognize when those negative charges come into our lives. We could be having the best day, almost awesome day, bebopping around, super fulfilled, and then you have a fight with your best friend or your spouse, or somebody tells you, or you get some comment that says you're an asshole or whatever. Could be any number of negative things, and it depends, right? I don't really get super affected by comments anymore because I've been on the internet long enough. Haters gonna hate, and it's the whole if you don't have haters, you're not standing strongly enough for something, that type of thing. You always will meet resistance if you're standing strongly for something. But I digress on that topic. It's more about the potency of the negative energy, which I very much feel like I've experienced. And that makes me even more committed to choosing out of those situations and relationships.
I was just, you had me think, my mind immediately went to a couple of either ends of consciousness or universal cosmicness. One was, I was thinking about the default of heat and cold, because positive and negative to me fall into this type of measurement where you're in the universe, is the default for things to warm up or things to cool off.
Yeah.
And so if you're talking about positive and negative energy, you could say, well, yes, the default is things to cool naturally, but I wouldn't say that that's always the case. There are circumstances where the default is for them to heat up, and that just depends on where your perspective is, on which side you're looking at things from. And then I was thinking about as well, the default of human nature, where do we default in our action? And we default to empathy. If we put children together and we don't affect them, we let them figure it out on their own, they generally empathize. They look to each other and they try to, the default inside that's how do I feel about what's happening to this other being, is an empathetic relationship. And so I think that that's the nature of that negative pulls negative, is somebody's experience a negative emotion, a negative experience. They're having a hard time. We empathize with that negativity. And so we also feel that negativity. So we're allowing them. And so in some ways you have to recognize that that's love in itself, right? That's the concept that, oh, that person is struggling, so I feel their pain because I know what it feels like to struggle. And so through my empathy, I'm now also struggling. Now we're both struggling. Now we're both hurting. Now we're both more. And so what the idea is to let your pause, don't allow that feeling to kind of permeate. You feel it come in, right? And you feel that you're like, oh, That's harsh.
Yeah.
That hurts. But you know what? I'm going to just recognize it, let it go right on by. I'm not going to become that. I'm
Yeah.
not going to allow that to take over my being. And
Yeah.
I'm going to continue my positive example of
Yes.
how to create outwardly positive energy, because we know that when we're struggling through a negative period in our life, a challenging period in our life, it's very easy to go down the rabbit hole on our own. And
Agreed.
it's only person who is going to climb out of that hole is ourself, right? The
Correct.
only one who can fix whatever's happening to you is you.
Yeah.
And your positive friends, the people who are in your life, your family members, your coworkers, your sponsors, your coaches, your ones who love you, who truly love you, will be waiting for you up top,
Yeah.
right? Where the positive energy exists. They'll be sitting there on top of the mountain. And when you get back out of that hole or climb up that hill, they'll be like, we were here the whole time waiting for you. We just couldn't come down there and get you because you had to
Right.
crawl out by yourself. You
Yeah.
have to create your own positive charge,
Yes.
your own energy, because we can't give you ours. Well, we each have to create our own. We have to
Agreed.
make it to the top. So
Yeah. And I think that's so true. Like that is a skill set to cultivate. Cause like, that's the thing. Like we cannot just remove ourselves forever ad infinitum from negative charge or negative influence. This is life. Life is unpredictable and conflict will come our way or differing opinions and whatnot. So it's so wise to point to that skill set of like, even though the potency is strong, if we have enough of that positive anabolic skill set built, like, and mindset and strength of character, integrity in our word, like all of those things that give us foundational strength, that allows us to navigate negative charge. Whether we decide to remove ourselves from a negative charge or not depends on whether that's what we decide, like, or whether it's something that this is a conflict to navigate, or this is a negative charge that I'm committed to being around. And as a result, I have a skill set that allows me to do that, So it's, yeah, like in terms of how do we earn that skill set, we find ourselves in the freaking basement.
mm-hmm.
Exactly. Like we have to claw out ourselves. Like I think back to, I may have said this before, but one of my friends long time ago, I think I did mention this about how I was upset. And he said, nothing bad's ever happened to you yet.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, that was such an insightful thing. And it's right on, because I didn't have the opportunity yet in life to figure out, to work through, like to begin developing this skill set of like managing my own hidden negativity, those hidden mindsets that were more negative and keeping my energetic down.
Where I found myself most challenged in the years has been two ways. One is kind of the one-on-one environment, when you have a direct, spatial relationship to other humans around you, right? So, and if you have to work with or spend time with people that, are not creating positive charge on their own, then it's exhausting, it's tiring.
Yes.
But in the bigger picture, there's the planet itself, there's life on Earth, right? And
Right.
if you're tuned in to the state of the world, it's challenging.
Agreed.
It's really hard not to get
Agreed.
really depressed, right? Because
Yeah.
you could easily allow yourself to be pulled way down low. And if you really look at the big picture, if you look at, pollution and money and global warming and deforestation and equal rights, and if you just go around all the things that are happening on Earth and all of the humanity, and you go, oh my God, this is
Yeah.
horrible. Life is
Yeah.
it's just a disaster state,
Right.
But the reality of this is that you have to allow yourself to be free of it. You
Yeah.
have to detach in a way that says, not that I don't care. I care so much
Mm-hmm.
that I will not allow myself to be part of it.
Correct. Exactly. I agree.
I cannot be a participant in the process that I'm witness to, because I will become lost in it. I will lose myself in all these things that are happening. What I need to do is to be observant to the observer of process and extract myself from the circumstance. And I know that, there's things that happen in my life that contribute to the greater whole in negative ways. So some of the products that I use cause pollution or are
Right.
not produced in the best ways.
Right.
Some of the things that happen in my life have inequality based in them. And if there's a level of consciousness of that, I can start making changes. I can start doing things that are going to allow me to feel somewhat better about my day-to-day, about my overall positive or negative charge. Like, am I a negative drain on the world, or am I a positive contribution to the world?
Yeah.
So when I choose how I speak outwardly to people, or when I choose what I purchase or don't purchase at a store,
Right.
or which vehicles I drive and why, or how I make my, when these things start becoming conscious choices, you're now making that change in society, right? As a greater piece of it, you're an awake human, right? A human who is conscious of their present place in the universe, in the earth, in the human condition, in their own life, and knowing that it's never perfect, but it's always perfect. There's nothing wrong at any time with you and everything around you, as long as you're aware that it's there.
Yeah. And it's fascinating. It's the path of growth. And I love the concept. I believe deeply that separateness is an illusion.
Totally.
That like we are all connected universally, energetically. Like, my spiritual calling has me really deeply believe in that connection of all things and people and life and all of it. And so when I look at that and go, that's where I reside spiritually, and then we talk about like, okay, I can't think about, or I have to remove myself from thinking too much about like poverty in Africa, or like some gratuitous like human pain or life pain or like planet pain. I recognize and I see that as where I am continuing to grow. Like, and I don't necessarily, because this is the thing, like I could easily be like, oh my God, I have to be like totally conscious of everybody's pain and plight, and I have to be zero waste, and I have to, and I could go crazy with that like perfectionist path. So to be gentle with myself as a person, as a human being who is called to grow, but isn't quite at a fully enlightened place, who really is in society and in my own life, living in fucking New Jersey outside of New York City. You know what I mean? Like I recognize and I give that to myself as like, this is my current reality and this is okay as well. And you are, like basically comforting and being gentle with myself that not being able to take on the world's entire issues, it's okay. Like, I know that sounds so big and dramatic, but like allowing that humanity in myself as well as I grow and aim to be a better and better human being and more contributing human being and more connected human being as I go.
I'd like to speak on it a little bit.
Yeah, please.
There's a friend that I'm sure when these podcasts or talks or conversations come to air will be listening, and I'm sure that when this comes up, she'll hear this and smile and laugh, because I deeply enjoy the opportunity to share in conversation with people who would like to kind of air these problems.
Right.
It's a complex and difficult problem to get through and to understand for yourself. And so she's a California resident, you know, and they for a long time have had a drought, you know, and the
Yeah.
water is a problem.
Yeah.
And we're talking, you know, and she says, how is it? I'm like, turn the water on, jump in the shower while it's cold, and then as soon as I soap up, I shut the water off again. You know, I get all
Yeah.
rinsed up, and I turn the water back on. I rinse off, and I turn the water. You know, and she's like, I'm trying to save every single drop, and then I drive down the road, and there are sprinklers spraying water down the drain. You know, and then there are huge agriculture places where they're just pouring, you know, wasting, and you know, industry. And she's like, how do I come to be okay with this and not be angry all the time at
Right.
all these inefficiencies of use for something that we know is such a precious commodity, when we know as a greater sense of beings involved in the usage of this resource, that it's a precious resource. And how do I be okay getting out of bed in the morning and not just being furious all the time?
Right.
You
Right.
know, and this is truth. Is There are a couple things. One is we have to accept our human condition, right? We
Yeah.
have to accept, this is me right now doing what I can in this instant to try and improve. So I'm making an effort on my scale of
Right.
relevance that I have control of right now to change things in a way that I can change them. I'm also going to make a decision of how I'm going to affect this on a grander scale. I'm
Mhm.
either going to, you know, go to my city council meeting and, you know, file a petition against the water wastage that's happening in this scene, and I can, you know, I can make a note, you know, make some subpoena to have this managed in a
Yep.
better way. I could speak to the individual's response. I could take an action outwardly towards that as a specific circumstance, or I could act on a grander scale, which has become involved in it in a governmental
Yep.
managerial level, you know, where I could step in and be like, I see this as a big issue in the world.
Activism. Yep.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And so I think that when you start to recognize the truth of the matter, you put yourself in a better position to measure scale. You're able
Mhm.
to better say, oh, okay, well, wait a second. How do I best affect things? And I've struggled with this a lot myself, and she'll know the conversation from listening. Do I go water rights and water usage? Is that what's important to me? Or do I work on creating positivity and teaching
Right.
others how to think in a better way, to be able to even talk about things without getting angry at each other,
Yeah.
you know? And so a lot of the time you realize we have a finite amount of time and a finite amount of energy. We have
Right.
to choose our battles, right? We got to
Yes.
pick the ones that are most important to us. And sometimes that means not addressing things that you may feel deeply impassioned about and that you know are vitally important, because they're not the priority of the bigger circumstance. You know, you got to choose and chew away at the one that you feel is really of value to you.
Yeah.
The last piece of it is non-judgment. It
Mhm.
is truly accepting that whoever is on the other side of that choice that you see as poor management or ineffective use of a resource, that they are just as entitled to make their mistakes in their lives as you are to make your mistakes in yours, as
Mhm.
I am to make my mistakes in mine. And me forgetting or not paying attention to my sprinkler running and water pouring down the drain
Right.
is disrespectful. It's poor use of a resource. It's uneducated. There's all kinds of things go along with it, but
Yeah.
I'm okay. It's okay for me to make a mistake like that. And as an observer to the person making that mistake, I have to give them the right and the opportunity to allow them the space to learn from their own mistakes, and hopefully help them if that's the thing at the
Yeah.
time, or
It
not.
interests. Sorry, say that last part.
I mean, maybe you can help them with their learning from it or not.
Yeah, and that, I mean, honestly, I don't even like the word mistake. I don't even really buy into that
Yeah,
word,
no
because
such
I
thing.
really don't believe there are any mistakes. Because I believe everything's for us, like my choice or your choice to not put focus on the sprinkler or whatever in this instance, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a mistake. Like if it's for you, it might be illuminating this very thought that you are committed to this particular way of being of service, and you're directing your energy consciously, deliberately in a direction of your choosing, because you are, a good person, like, and again, it's like, who's to say what that is? Ideally, we have it all underneath us somewhere, it's like, that's a bigger conversation for another day. But like, if we go circle all the way back to the beginning of this talk, it's like, why are we doing what we're doing? Like, yeah, I could easily, capability wise, am I physically capable to go and lead a march about some topic in the world, or go to my senator, or go into some CEO of some billion-dollar company and inspire him to care about this world issue? I could do that. Mm-hmm. I could do that. Like the capability wise, I could do it. You know what I mean? Like, I know I could generate the energy and will to walk over someplace and to speak to another human with certain words coming out of my mouth. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
However, I choose to channel my energy in this format because for me uniquely, I feel like at this time, whether I decide next week, next year, whenever to go talk to the billionaire in New York City remains to be seen. But right now, I feel like this is, if we talk about going where we are energetically called, where we feel energetically aligned, aligning with those people we feel energetically called to align with, etc., that this is where that currently is for me, this mode of working, not just this project, but how I'm approaching my work, where I am approaching my focus in my work, how it used to be more remote, now it's more based in New York City. Like that, all of those choices are based around what I feel is most energetically aligned for me right now, because that is what I believe will allow me to be of highest service in the world.
I have to say, I'm going to mirror you.
Yeah.
I'm going to reflect back and say the choices that I'm making in my life to create circumstances, working environments, groups, whatever I'm doing it for the reason that I want to create a growth bubble, a positive building of energy, which is going to set an example or relate to other positive builders of energy. And I'm not really interested in battling a negative energy down, but more so setting an example of positive energy for others to also build their own alignment, pile of positive energy next to.
And theoretically, that build of positive energy, and this is what I personally believe, even if what I said earlier is totally right, that negative energy is more potent, theoretically, building that big giant, at some point, there's a tipping point. And this is something that very much inspires me about human consciousness and growth. That's what I'm really deeply most, I mean, this, again, we can end here and go from here, but like, stay tuned, peeps. Yeah. But like that, there's a tipping point at some point where that anabolic positive mass will tip. Like, I believe in that. You know, I'm committed to being a part of that effort as you are as well.
Thanks, Mel.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for listening and for being a part of the Trust the Journey family. You know, share, tweet, post, email, all that stuff we ask every week, but really share however you are inspired or with anyone you think this show might help.
Join us next week where on episode 9, we'll be taking you behind the scenes into our process of building this project, sharing our work in the actual values and vision building exercise and the lists that have become the foundation of everything that we're creating.
So badass. Thank you guys so much for being here. We love you. Say it every week.
Love you.
Remember, keep laughing, keep loving, and keep trusting the journey.